Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today has been sponsored and dedicated to the loving memory of Ms. Lily Safra Alea Shalom. Leilu Nishmat Lea Bat Chana. Her philanthropy has reached so many throughout the world. And as well, in a leftover from the before Shabbat, we also it was dedicated in celebration of the birthday of Stephanie. We gave you the shout out as well on Shabbat. Azak Baruch Stephanie Dadon Haber. And it was dedicated by Avram Simmons, wishing you a life full of happiness and success. And as well, the Wake of Cobra was sponsored by David Yash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do it today and every day. We mentioned last night in the Hakdama to Silichot, for all those that didn't see the event live or online, if you'd like to, you can actually go to the synagogue's Instagram page, or if anyone wants a copy, it will also be on our YouTube channel, where you have we're going through all the silichot that are going to be mentioned on Yom Kippur and explaining them. And one of the comments that Rabbi Mizrahi made last night is a comment that I'd like to begin with tonight. I'd like to begin with today. The pasuk says, one of the interpretations of that pasuk is that when God brings you kapara, He brings you kapara for all the sins that you made lifnei amonai, in front of God. But that the sins that a person has between themselves and their fellow man, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not bring you kapara. Not only that, the Gemara gives a list of which things a person needs in order to be able to get kapara, to get forgiveness in their life. So if a person did a sin like this, it requires a korban. A person did a sin like this, it requires a korban and Yom Kippur. A person did a sin like this, it requires korban, this, Kippur, and Yisurin, and to have difficulties in his life. And there's certain mitzvot that a person, only time he gets kapara is with death itself, and that's the mitzvah, or the avera rather, of Chilul Hashem. My friends, however, that's only true on a mitzvah, ben adam lemakom, between God and man. But when you have a mitzvah, or when you have an avera that was not fulfilled between man and their fellow man, nothing gets you forgiveness. The only thing that gets you forgiveness is asking that person for forgiveness. So, my friends, we mentioned yesterday in the Shubha Drasha, we talked about the idea of saying sorry, of apologizing. There's nothing more offensive than an insincere apology. So a lot of times you have a guy comes up to you and they're like, Yamaichali. Remember that in yeshiva. Yamaichali. Now for those of you who don't speak yeshiva, okay? Yamaichali stands for, in Rosheh Tevot, are you mochel mi? Okay? That's how they would say. Maichali. Right? What is that? Right? And then, like, before you could even answer, they're like, Yemagli, 2 more times. They're like, I asked you 3 times, now it's your problem. Sorry, not a single opinion follows that approach. Not one shita in halakha says that if you bark the words, are you mochel mi at someone, especially an hour before Yom Kippur, that you've fulfilled your obligation of asking mechila, slicha or chapara. It needs to be that the person understands that you are sincerely apologetic. If you've not fulfilled that most basic requirement of asking for forgiveness, of course the person doesn't have to forgive you, and of course you've also not fulfilled your obligation. The poskim actually talk about a scenario where you have someone who forgives you and you know they forgive you. Where do you have a scenario like that? Let's say you have a person who stands up publicly and they say with all sorts of feeling and conviction, I forgive anybody for anything they ever did, all the kids in my class in school, all the people in the synagogue, in the community, all of this one, that one. He mentions the guy forgives everybody. Just because someone forgives you doesn't mean that you don't have to ask forgiveness. Now that sounds like an interesting thing, because we think that the purpose of asking forgiveness is in order to get the person to forgive you. But as Mark said, off the stage left, it's different. Why is it different, Mark? That's about that. Excellent. That's his deal with you. But your deal with him, you never solved. Once I've hurt your feelings, even if you forgive me, I have a problem. I have an issue that I need to rectify. And the only way I can get that rectified is by coming forward and saying, I'm sorry. The way I explain it is, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Selachna, please forgive. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Salachti, I have forgiven. Even if God says, Salachti, I have forgiven, Moshe Rabbeinu still needs to say, Selachna, please forgive. Because you have an obligation to come and make that statement. So my friends, a person who has a brain, a person who's prepared, a person who takes this process seriously, is not going to leave it for Yom Kippur afternoon in middle of the Seudah, where he's going to call, they used to have on the phones, you could have in your contacts, in the top, you could list favorites. Could you imagine you have a guy, he has listed in his phone, least favorites. Right? All the people you don't like, he speaks Lashon Hara about, he tries to mess over, he doesn't treat with respect. Right? Imagine there was a list, right? Mass text idea. So you have the least favorite people. So those people, a lot of times, a person will think to themselves, you know what, I'm not going to ask that person mechila. Those are the people you need to focus on the most. You're going to call the guy during Yom Kippur Seudah, you're not going to get it done. It's not going to seem sincere. And not only that, who wants to say, I forgive, when they know the only reason why you're calling them is because you're nervous for Yom Kippur? Doesn't that undermine the sincerity of your bakasha? Now, it's true. It's not that the person doesn't get it, because you know what? He's also making phone calls. So everybody understands where everybody else is coming from. But really, ideally, that should not be the case. That's why we have Elul. That's why we have Aseret Yemei Teshuba. So to take the chance between now and Yom Kippur to try and make sure that you rack your brains and you think, who are the people that I need to ask mechila from? Now, it is important to understand that the mitzvot ben adam lechavero.
So, Rabbi, we have the standard request of mechila.
We have a first here. We have a question on the broadcast. B'chavod.
Interact. Okay. So,
no, you can let him ask the question. Go ahead.
yeah. The question is what's the effect of if I said something, or if I, please forgive me, is that an apology, or do you have to have an actual specification of an event or a circumstance to apologize for, but not this omnibus overall, I apologize if I ever did anything?
So I think that's a little bit what Mark was alluding to. Mass texts, very hard to say that applies in any way, shape, or form. However, it might still be a nice thing. Let me tell you why. Because even if the person is not necessarily fulfilling the obligation of forgiveness with a mass text saying, if I did anything to you, please forgive me, we find that the Chachamim also made and instituted in Tefillah these mass text-like ideas. So as an example, we say, Hare ani moche lechol mi sheknit oti o shechis oti. I behold, I forgive anyone that ever got me angry. You're not thinking about that guy that punched you in the nose on the evening of March the 7th, 1962. You're not necessarily, you're saying a general statement, but the general statement is a petach. It opens up something. And a lot of times, you get people that will reach out to you and they'll say, I saw you asked forgiveness. I just want you to know, I didn't know if you forgot about it, but you sideswiped my car, you were supposed to pay me, right? I did a service for you, you never paid me. I did Rabbi gave a speech, I was supposed to I didn't get paid back, I didn't do this. You made a donation to my tzedakah, you never fulfilled the donation. Sometimes it becomes a petach. So I don't know if it's a bad thing. I don't think it should be abolished. But if that's taking the place of your asking forgiveness of people, I'm sorry to say to you, you have another thing coming. Now, I want to just say, it is not just in the realm of mechilas slicha chapara that a person has an obligation to ensure that they're being sensitive to their friends' needs, to their friends' feelings. I want to share with you a crazy example. The Gemara tells us about a time where Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was traveling with his students. It's a Yerushalmi. And the Yerushalmi says that he gets to this river, and as he gets to the river, he, what's it called? He speaks to the river and he says, what are you doing? Ginai, what are you doing? You got to get out of my way. I need to go. And as he steps forward, the water separates and it allows him to walk forward. A mini version of Kiryat Yamsuf. Anyway, the students ask him and they say, are we also going to be able to go with you like this? Or if we go in, are we going to drown? So he tells the students, he says, if anyone can say to themselves, can say about themselves, that they never in their life hurt the feelings of another Jewish person, then they can follow me in the river. So you see that this idea is also a proactive thing. It's also something which helps a person in the positive sense, so that there are miracles that are done for a person. There are heightened levels of beracha that are brought to a person who's careful with the feelings, with the sensitivities of the people around them. So not only in Aseret Yemei Teshuba do we have this weight on us to try and get it off, if we're going to be strict about all sorts of mitzvot, like Chalav Yisrael and Pat Yisrael, and even if you're not usually strict on Bishul Yisrael for Sfaradim, go for it, Glak kosher, like we talked about the other day, how much more so is there this focused determination to make sure to fulfill my obligations towards my brother, towards my sister, towards my fellow Jew amongst Am Yisrael. So I want to talk, if I can, just a little bit about this idea, about what it means to ask forgiveness from another Jew. What is this concept of asking forgiveness from another Jew? The Gemara relates a very interesting story. Gemara relates about a certain one of the Amoraim, Rabbah, who hired some workers to do a job for him. And what was the job that he hired them to do? He hired them to carry a barrel of wine for him, to transport it from one place to the other. Anyway, these workers, very poor workers, they take the barrel of wine, very expensive barrel of wine, and they start transporting this barrel of wine to where it's supposed to go. On the way, they get halfway there, whatever, all the way, they drop the barrel breaks, wine's gone. They come to Rabbi, and they say, look, it's true we didn't deliver the wine, but we worked all this amount of work that we worked for you, and we didn't get paid, and we need the money. Rabbi says, are you joking? I paid you to deliver the thing. Not only did you not do the work, you caused me a tremendous amount of damage. They went to Rav, and Rav said to him, he said, pay them. So he asked them, Dina Hachi? Is this the law? What was he really asking? He was asking, like sometimes you get people in the community that say, Rabbi, is this the minhag? What is halakha or minhag? Right? Is this the spirit, Rabbi, or is this the law? Do I have to? Dina Hachi? And he says, yes. Dina Hachi. Why? For you. For you, you have to do that which is right and that which is just. Now, to me, this was a game changer. Because you think about what this means. My obligations tell me that I don't have to give it. Different opinions in the Gemara. One opinion is that the reason why it was Vasita Yashar Ve'atov was because he was rich and they were poor. Right? But even if you don't go that according to that opinion, that means that something I don't have an obligation to do, there's another obligation called doing the right thing. Vasita Yashar Ve'atov. Now, it's interesting because there's many different opinions as to what is classified in Vasita Yashar Ve'atov. Ramban writes that the Torah could not discuss every eventuality that would ever come up in the history of man, in the evolution of time. So therefore, it gave you a catch-all to tell you Vasita Yashar Ve'atov, everything that's there. But really, he's describing what seems to be the mitzvot that are already in the game. But from this Gemara, we're seeing that there's also responsibilities that are outside of the realm of your regular chiyuvim, which means, come on, do the right thing. Be a good guy. Vasita Yashar Ve'atov. My friends, this obligation, I think, changes the name of the game when it comes to the way a person sees Ben Adam L'Chavero, and the way also they see what they need to ask forgiveness in Ben Adam L'Chavero. Let's say, as an example, these workers had never gone to Rav. Rav had never told them to go tell Rabbah that he has to pay them. Rabbah had never asked Rav Dina Hachi. I want you to imagine, they break the barrel, they don't have the chutzpah to ask to get paid, he doesn't pay them. In Shamayim, it's clear from the Gemara, Rabbah would have had a problem. Why? Because he was supposed to pay them. The halakha doesn't say so.